Okay, well, I guess I will go ahead and get started. I am John Harris, aka Rodney Lives. I have another pseudonym if you look through Loadstar issues, but I don't use that anymore. Yeah, you might know me. I wrote a column for the website GameSetWatch a while ago on roguelike computer games. That's probably how I'm best known. I've written the books Exploring Roguelike Games and We Love Mystery Dungeon. I write the blog SetSideB, which we work very hard on. It updates daily. I did interviews with Gamasutra with indie devs. I write posts for Metafilter. I revived the website of Furniture to the Great Brown Oaf, if any of you ever heard of that. I didn't think so. It's a classic old piece of the early web. And I contacted its creator and revived the website, yeah. As former Loadstar contributor, I maintained the website for a short while. And big thing is I'm the maintainer of a new edition of Loadstar Compleat. Where $15 you can get all the issues of Loadstar and Loadstar 128 and almost all the other things that they publish for the Commodore 64. And a menu where all the items are and a long list, but there's also categories and text search and lots of other niceties. And there's socials, which I'm pretty much putting on here, so they'll be in the archive. Yeah, Mastodon, Blue Sky, itch.io, NeoCities, etc. And Roguelike Celebration, which is in a month, and I'm helping out with. Thanks to Quentin representation. So, and we are at 8:30 exactly. So, some of you know, Loadstar was a computer magazine on disk released for the Commodore 64. They also did a 128 version that was quarterly. Put up first by Softdisk Publishing, and then when Softdisk went under, or actually they became an ISP that got bought out in 2006. But Loadstar continued on, owned by J&F Publishing, which is, I think, Judy Mangum and Fender Tucker. You might know, if you haven't heard this, the principals of id Software used to work for Softdisk. They worked on Big Blue Disk. And they decided to strike out alone with Wolfenstein 3D and Commander Keen. And then they became Big Juju, and now Carmack is like a part owner of Oculus, I think. I don't know. Anyway, that's off the subject. So anyway, the Softdisk was an Apple II magazine on disk, and they figured they would branch out to this newfangled Commodore 64 that had just come out. And yeah, a lot of its early programs were ports of their Apple II software. Yeah, I'll get that. But then they struck up a 4-year deal with Commodore's magazines, Commodore Magazine and PowerPlay. And they served as the disk supplement for those magazines. Back in the day of type-in computer magazines, there would be pages and pages of listings that you had to laboriously type in line after line. But they would sell disk supplements that had all of the programs already entered for you. And they were usually like around $8 or $9. You usually had to send off for them, but sometimes you could find them bundled with the magazine on the stands. And Loadstar was the one for Commodore Magazine and PowerPlay. That wasn't all it was, but for about 4 years, it was a substantial portion of what they published. Let's see, they made a deal with other companies like their software. If you ever heard of Polarware, several of their games would got published on Loadstar. Later on, Pinsate. Pinsate's an awesome little game. It's on Loadstar Compleat. It's a sort of like chess, but kind of it was with weird pieces, and you're just trying to get across a hostile chessboard. Quantum Link is on at least 2 or 3 issues of Loadstar. What they said would become AOL. In the days when AOL was young, they basically left Quantum Link to languish. And then they just shut it down. I'm bluffing. Let me try to stay on the topic here. Early issues of Loadstar came with an extra blank disc in the package. that you would expected to use to write feedback on with a small word processor on the disk. You'd save your comments to the disk, mail that to Softdisk, and yeah, it does seem kind of pointless, but they kept on with that feedback method for a long time. So, okay, so Loadstar lasted from 1985 to 2007. To put that into perspective, 1985 was, it was not, the golden age of arcades had ended, but not for long. And 2007, it's well into the internet age. At its height, according to Fender, Loadstar had 20,000 subscribers, not including newsstand sales. I'm told by Dave Moorman, who was the last editor, that at the end they had about 100 subscribers remaining. But, you know, Commodore owners die hard, and Loadstar themselves supported most of the company for a while, I am told. There's the story that Fender and Jeff Jones have told me that the idea that the company thought that their future was going to lie in their PC and Macintosh products, Big Blue Disk and Discworld. And then the internet came along and they dashed that whole idea. Meanwhile, Loadstar continued to sell. I mean, it went in decline when they left newsstands, I think around here's 71. I think 72 was the last issue, but I'm not sure. Let's see. So, yeah, Loadstar outlived all the others, which is interesting because I don't think Loadstar is really that well known. I mean, a few of you have heard of it, but it's kind of a rarefied audience. So, yeah, the first I'd ever heard of it was on a newsstand. So when I picked up my first issue, I think it was issue 34, on the bookshelf, on the magazine rack of Walden Books. And I got a couple of issues that way, and then, yeah, I sent a program in, and they accepted it, and actually it won a prize, which is kind of surprising to me. So let's talk about some prominent figures. Loadstar's the big name in Loadstar's history is Fender Tucker. He was the longest serving editor. He wasn't the first editor. He came on around issue 43, but he lasted to issue 199, which it came out in the year 1999. That's when he handed it over to Dave Moorman. And the magazine continued along. Dave is a great guy, but it's a lot of work for just one person. And the issues came out more and more sporadically. I think only a couple came out in 2007. And then a tornado hit his house and destroyed his setup for making issues. And so that was what basically caused him to lay down the keyboard on issue 249. Yeah. And issue 250 did make it out, but it was in an incomplete kind of form. So, anyway, Fender brought a literate and engaging personality to the magazine. He wrote very entertaining editorials. He wrote stories about how Loadstar was produced in the Loadstar Tower, a 90-plus story behemoth in the middle of downtown Shreveport, Louisiana. Actually, Loadstar was made in a basement. And he wrote stories about Mies Calhoun, spelled with 2 O's, his nefarious alter ego, and blues musician. They were entertaining. You really came to look forward to what he would write in the editorial on each issue. Or I did. Let's see. Yeah, and there's Vender's first meeting. Al Vakovius, who was one of the founders of Softdisk, said, as far as Commodore is failing, but we'll keep it going as long as we can. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I wrote here, He wrote some programs, but programming wasn't really his strong point. It was writing and organization and just constructing the magazine. His associate editor, Jeff Jones, learned from some previous people like Jim Weiler, Mike Maynard. There are a lot of names in Loadstar. Some have went on to other things. There's one, Joel Ellis Ray, who I think, according to something I read online, which we all know how accurate those are, went on to do some work on Ultima 5. But he's got an entry on Moby Games, yeah. So let's see. Fender's still alive, by the way. He's gotten on in years. But all of the principal Loadstar people, Fender Tucker, Jeff Jones, and Dave Moorman, are still with us. Actually, they have Facebook accounts that they post on fairly often, if you're looking for them. After Loadstar, Fender went to found an independent publisher called Ramble House. Have any of you heard of a writer called Harry Stephen Keeler? Yeah, it's a totally other kind of thing. He was an author of mysteries, but they are the craziest mysteries you will ever read. He once wrote a story in which a person was found dead in his garden with all the signs of asphyxiation. So the police, naturally, their prime suspect was a character called the Flying Strangler Baby, who was a dwarf whose modus operandi was to be dangled from a helicopter while wearing diapers. In that way, somehow sneak up behind people and garrote them. He was not, in fact, the murderer. According to Keeler's logic, the true murderer in that case was Napoleon Bonaparte, because he was a distant ancestor of the deceased who passed down to him an aberrant gene that sometimes causes spontaneous death with all the symptoms of asphyxiation. Keeler wrote dozens of these books. In Ramble House, Fender found out about them and published a whole bunch of Keeler's and got written up once in the New York Times for it. And Ramble House is still around. They don't publish Keeler's anymore, but it's a type of thing that Fender it would be interested in, and it's very, very entertaining, I think. They published over 500 books, yeah. So Jeff Jones was his assistant editor for about 10 years. The main menu system on an issue of Loadstar is called the presenter. It is the system by which the instructions, the text files, the editorials are read or printed out, if you like, and the programs are launched. Jeff wrote the later presenter that Loadstar used, starting from about issue 120 to the end. And he did it all. I mean, earlier presenters were partly written in BASIC, but he did it all in machine code. It's a huge feat, I think, at least. Dave Moorman, or the Reverend Dave Moorman, he is, in fact, a clergyman, took over for the last 49 issues and kept going to the internet age. Yeah, he had, by that time, Loadstar's contribution base had been declining, so he ended up posting something. I think there's actually some wares on some later issues, but he kept it going as far as he could. All right. Right now we are 12 minutes in, which is a pretty good time. I got a bunch of names here, the people who worked on it. Jim and Judy Mangum, the founders. Jim and Judy split up some years into it. And I think that Judy got the company in the process. I don't know what the complete details are there. Early editors of Loadstar were Al Bakovius, who was the first editor, Alan Gardner, Joe Garrett, who tragically died in a car accident some months after his editorship concluded. Greg Malone, let's see, Jim Weiler, or Jimmy Weiler. I understand he was actually a teenager and he was editor. Val Golding and Donna Woody, those are all the other editors, yeah. Mike Maynard was the main tech person in the early history. Jim Ray, I already mentioned. Scott Resch. Yeah, this is not an entertaining portion, but these are names that are emblazoned upon my memory as as the people who put this together. I stuck with Loadstar a long time, and I only really stopped reading them when I went to college, and I regret that now. So some frequent contributors. John Matson is, is all this interesting to you? It just sounds like a dull recounting to me to hear it out loud, but these names here. John Matson was Loadstar's primary gamesmith. He, I don't even know how to describe them. You could find it though. Barbara Shulak was a puzzle creator who created a recurring Loadstar feature called the Puzzle Page, which lasted from around issue 60 to the 190s. And there would be a puzzle page in every issue with several crossword puzzles. Yeah, I have no idea how she found the energy to put them all together. And she would invent other kinds of puzzles and the programs along with Fender to present them. And when she stopped doing programs for Loadstar, she made a website of puzzles, and she sold books of her puzzles on Lulu. And her website seems like it's still up, but like some scammers have gotten a hold of it. And no one knows what's happened to Barbara Shulak or John Matson. They're just names that have disappeared. And that's sad, I think. I'd love it if one of these people would see this someday and get in touch with me, because I'd really like to talk to them. Maurice Randall. He actually has kind of I heard a bit of a bad name attached to him. He created a GeoS variant called Wheels. Maurice Randall is still around, I found out. I actually exchanged email with him a few months ago. He has moved on to Android development. Maurice Jones, according to Fender, could write a solitaire card game in one evening. He had a library of routines that he would turn to that allowed him to just create card games. He wrote dozens of solitaire card games for Loadstar, many of which that he invented. I'm losing my voice just thinking about them, because it's a massive load of software that few people, I think, have heard of, and I'm really trying to do my best to make sure that they're remembered, especially Walt Harnd. Walt Harnd did most of the cover images. When you read up a Loadstar issue, it'll come up with a high-res illustration while the presenter loads. And many of those were created by Walt Harnd. He was a traditional media artist who just liked working on Commodore 64s. And there's many compilations of his works on the issues. Yeah, I found out that he passed away before even Loadstar ended. He was fairly old, but his legacy lives on in these discs. Anyway, so some other names. J.C. Hilty. If any of you remembered this name from anywhere, because he wasn't just on Loadstar. J.C. Hilty also published on Commodore Magazine, Ahoy Magazine, and Loadstar's competitor Uptime. Hilty, his games were mostly written in BASIC, but with like machine language routines to handle moving the enemies. It is an interesting way of working. That's the style of the programs that were printed on these magazines. Many of them were written in BASIC with a machine code routine or two. It's a style of coding it's basically lost. You could barely give away a BASIC program these days, I think. Everyone tries to become much more professional. I think that's lost something, I think. David Caruso, too, created just one program for Loadstar, but it was a big one. He wrote a full-fledged D&D game adventure creation and playing system called Dungeon. The way that worked is one person would use his tools to create a dungeon map on like a one screen with all the encounters and the monsters and the treasure. And then he could give that to his friends who could use the player to create a character and then take them into the dungeon that was created. And you could have one character go through a succession of dungeons like this and sort of an adventuring career. It's an interesting style of game that you don't really see a lot of. If any of you have heard of something called Eamon, E-A-M-O-N, that was a similar idea on the Apple II, but it was a huge number of public domain adventures that people created, and that someone else could use the Eamon master disk to create a character and take them through them and build their character that way. I think there's still an Eamon website or two that exists on the web if you want to search for it. Let's see, Ricky DeRocher? Ricky DeRocher is actually, if anything, more obsessed with Loadstar than I am. He's part of the reason I was able to put all this together. He was a contributor to Loadstar in the Dave Moorman days. He has an itch.io page as well. He's made a YouTube account where he has recorded and memorialized Loadstar games. He plays a small portion of them and puts them on his account. And he inspired me to do that for a few as well. And just to try to help people learn about these things. Anyway, so I already mentioned most of this about under the end of Softdisk there. I had a Commodore 128 product that was quarterly, and itself lasted 10 years, 42 issues. Many of their bigger contributors, they also published compilations of their work, including new material. So Barbara Shulak has a couple of puzzle discs that they sold separately with new puzzles on them. And there's like 6 collections of Walt Harn's art. Loadstar, that was when in the internet age. It was something Dave Moorman tried. They tried creating issues of Loadstar and emailing to people to run on an emulator. And let's see. And there's Loadstar Compleat, which is my project, which I'm going to demonstrate shortly because it's a good way, I think, to walk through Loadstar's history to show you actually what the issues were like. Let's see. Let's move on to that actually. I think that will be okay. So this is the program I put together. Here are all the Loadstar 64 issues. So here's what the first issue of Loadstar looked like. Yeah. Yeah, about the first 19 or so issues started up with the Close Encounters of the Third Kind alien music. And there's the colophon. Yeah. The description. This deal no longer applies, okay? Yes. And there's they send you a blank disk to send your feedback on it. Let's see. And it's very boring and plain right here. The payload programs on side 2. When I made the menu, I included the 1581 version of the issues, so that to eliminate all that disk swapping. And French military game. Let's see, Moonlander, Slot Machine, Cows and Bulls. French military game actually turned out to be based upon a mathematical recreations column by Martin Gardner. Another thing that was based upon mathematical recreations columns was Conway's Game of Life. which is like 6 different versions throughout Loadstar's history, I found out. I wrote one of them. When I wrote it, I had no idea all these previous versions had already been published. So, how smart are you? And as you see, each issue of Loadstar is a variety of programs, games, utilities. They published a spreadsheet once. I'm thinking a lot of I think. Let's see. So let's start up the French military game and just have a look at what it looks like. Reading. There's the instructions written by Martin Gardner. I don't think it was actually written by. I think it was inspired by. Sorry. So I'm trying to remember how to start something. Yeah, they didn't stick a lot with these menus for long. There we go. Yep, Alan Gardner wrote. Do you need the instructions? Yes. Go ahead, put in warp mode. Yep, and it's just a basic game. It's a vulture-based strategy game. The graphics entirely in Petsky. I think it's written in BASIC, in fact. Yeah, it's pretty primitive going in the early days. So let's go ahead and exit this. So let's skip ahead maybe to issue 20 or so. Let's see. Speed it up. See, it's already moved on to a scrolling menu. This is about the time when they were doing Commodore magazine programs. Here's Peek, Pokes, and Sys, which is a series of programming tutorials that they wrote that lasted like 60 installments. As you see, there's 4 of them in this issue. And there's feedback. That seemed to be their reviews. They really tried to make a complete magazine, not just a collection of programs. In fact, I found out Loadstar published a surprising number of recipes. So what I did was I got the text files of all the recipes, over 250 of them, and I put them all on a website. I guess if you just search for Loadstar recipes, you'll find them. Let's see. So, and yeah, it's not up to show off. Let me think. 42, I think, is where it is. Moving ahead. Yeah, they dumped that Close Encounters musical sting. Now, starting with issue 30, every issue had new background music. And the scrolling menu was also very slow. Yeah. Move on. I think it was 39. I'm going to get out of this and go back to highlights because there's a certain Spotlight Games. Zorfon. This was issue 39. This is one of the best games Loadstar published, I think. Yeah. Zorfon by Nick Peck. This whole thing is coded in machine language. And it's really slick. Yeah, I forget what the controls are, so waiting to get through the introduction here. And death itself. Semicolon and L and F. Okay. So. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this is just the first level though. There's 5 levels and each of them plays completely differently. The second level is basically a Centipede clone. And the third level is, well, it's pretty intense. I can barely get past it. But, yeah, I don't think I've even seen the last level. Anyway. So, yeah. Okay, yeah, that paused it. So let's exit. Back. Let's see. Oh, just a second. There. Okay, so issues. So I think it's maybe around issue 60. Oh, there's the Loadstar Tower that I mentioned before. Yeah, the folder structure here, the menu presentation. This is what Loadstar would stick with for the whole rest of its run. They rewrote Jeff Jones rewrote the presenter in issue 120, where it became much faster and slicker. But for the most part, it still looks and works the same way. No, that's not it. Commodore Magazine was still around. This was actually one of the last issues Commodore Magazine had programs on. Brainware, Robin Hood's Gold. Oh, Digit Hunt! Digit Hunt is very likely the first computer implementation of Sudoku. Yeah, that's mentioned on its Wikipedia page. I don't know if it's, I don't forget exactly which one, but to bring that up. Yeah. But it's different. It's not a set puzzle. Instead, they're randomly generated puzzles, and you try to complete them as quickly as you can. Yeah, and you pick skill level 1. Okay, and as you see, it's obviously Sudoku. I'm not going to try to solve it here because I am completely distracted, and we have a lot of ground to cover. How far are we on time? We're at 9:08, about 14 minutes left before Q&A. So, oops. Alt-D, yeah, close it. So, moving on. Since Loadstar would look pretty much the same, with different music and sometimes some different graphics, the presenter will look the same from now on. They did 111. See, they added a little inset graphic for each folder on the side, including the Loadstar Tower there. Yeah, Fender could really come up with a gimmick and stick to it. Brainware, Funware, what was the Hoopy Hockey? Pintron, I don't remember these. Pentominos is sort of a Tetris-like game, but the pieces don't fall. Classic Car Show. Loadstar published a whole bunch of GEOS software. Of course, you can't run a GEOS program directly from Loadstar, so they're on the disk, they're inaccessible from the presenter. You have to boot your copy of GEOS and then put the disk in. This actually caused us some problems in trying to put together this version of Loadstar Compleat, because at some point in the past, some issues had been copied by a non-GEOS aware file copier. GEOS files have a special customized format to make them with the icon data and some other attributes. So if you copy GEOS files in a non-GEOS aware copier, it'll mess stuff up. I think we're still trying to hunt up some bugs in that area, but most of these issues still work. And for the itch.io release, we found a few corrupted issues and managed to fix what was wrong with them and get them working again. Before us, Fender sold copies of Loadstar Compleat on CD-ROM. And those were the versions that had some of the corrupt files. So we're happy to be able to fix those and get working version of these discs out there again. Let's go on here. Okay. So, yeah, most of the remaining issues look like that. So, we can go to highlights here. Spotlight games. I went through and found a whole bunch of interesting games just to show off. The people can get them quickly. Bouncing Camungos was a Polarware game. I already showed you Zorfon. There's Pinsate, which I mentioned before, that sort of weird chess game. Oh, the red obelisk here. If any of you have ever played Discount, if you ever went to a store and got a disc of Discount software, you might already be aware of the red obelisk, because I think it was Mastertronic that published it on one of their Discount discs. It's the sort of space mining alchemy game where you're given a jewel and you have to prod it with various instruments like lasers and ultrasonic devices. You're trying to use this sort of alchemism to turn it into the fabled red obelisk, which is a fabulously valuable item. But at the time you have to fight off space pirates and you have to go out into an asteroid belt and collect the things. It's such a unique game. I don't think there's any other game that's ever been made that's really like it. This is the types of things that you can find if you browse around the archives. Jed's Journey is like a Legend of Zelda clone. It's not as good as Zelda, I have to say, but it's still pretty sharp. It was made by just one person. I think Jason Merlo was his name. Yeah, I can just show this off real quick. Run. Alt-T. This might require a joystick. Yeah, I think this is joystick dependent, and I don't have one with me, so I can't show that one off. Let's see. Alt-D, close. See, C2C is a kind of civilization-like style railroad game, where you lay down tracks across the country, and you set stations, train stations, and wherever you set a train station, if a train stops at it, you get a small amount of money. But every time that happens, there's a chance that a house will randomly get placed around that station. And the houses block your further development. But the houses also make the stations more valuable. And you lay out more train routes and you get more trains. But the end condition of the game is a little harsh. If two trains in the game ever collide, your game ends immediately. That was actually, I think, the first game that Dave Moorman wrote for Loadstar. And I remember beta testing this back then, and it's a marvelous game. And I've said this, Loadstar's archives are full of treasures. It takes some sifting through to find them, but there's so many wonderful little things. Burger Time 97, for example, is a recreation of Burger Time. It's written by a couple of European programmers. Around the time this came out, a lot of Loadstar's contributors were from Europe and from the demo scene. They published a fair number of demos. Okay, Golems here, one of the later issues, one of the last issues, was a Lemmings recreation written by Dave Moorman. The idea is it comes with a level editor. And when you play, the game picks from all the levels in the disc. So the game is sort of customized by your creations for it. And again, it's made so that you can give this to friends to play and see if they can figure out your puzzles. All right, well, it's 9:08. We can go ahead and open up to Q&A now, I think at this point, if there's something you'd like me to demonstrate, or if you just want to ask questions. Yes? Oh, sure. Let me find Dungeon here. The Dungeon has its own thing. Yeah, here it is. Oh, I should show off Alfredo before we finish. Okay, dungeon. The disk dungeon is on. This is another thing. I told you about the problem with geos files. Another problem is relative files, which is a special file type that Commodore built into their disk drives. And again, if you copy a disk and you're not using a copier that's aware of relative files, it's just going to create errors, and it's just going to mess up. And Dungeon uses lots of relative files. So what I did was, and when they made I think there are other problems with it too, that the 1581 version of the disk, they used such a copier for Dungeon, and so it broke it. So what I did was I got the 1541, the 5.25 inch disk version of it, included it. But this is what Dungeon is like. Yay! Let me have a look. Dungeon boot. I need to fix that. Look at my typing speed. Okay. IFC, I think, was a company that Dave Caruso created to sell Dungeon before he sold it to Loadstar. Okay. All right, so this is the character creation screen. So here you create a character. You select a race, human. We'll go ahead and keep it. Name it Rodney. It asks you for your full name too. And your initials. And your favorite color. And it prints out a character sheet. So I'll hit yes. A lock. This is so someone else doesn't use your character. I sense that David Caruso may have had a brother who played as well who might have used his characters. So we'll hit no. And there's the screen. There's your experience points, your rank. This is basically a score table in addition to a character roster. The characters are sorted by how many experience points they have. And one of the interesting things about Dungeon is if a character is in a dungeon and you just quit the game, you don't exit or die, you just say you don't want to start playing anymore, like you want to avoid some danger coming up. If you turn off the system, when you come back to the dungeon screen, your character will be listed as gone. King Allegris, you'll see here at the top, is gone. What that means is the character is finding his way back to town. And you have to play other characters. I think it's like 8 adventures they have to go on before the character will finally return. So let's start. Rodney. I now need to do the dungeon data disk, and I think this will work. Dungeon's a little complicated because is this it? You have to have a dungeon disk prepared. And there are some, but I need to find which ones they are. Try this again. Okay, so let's go. Attach disk image, drive 8. Let's see if I can find one. Oh, I need to remember an issue that had a dungeon adventure on it. This is going to be difficult to demonstrate if I can't remember which. Yeah. Basically what the game looks like, I actually uploaded a YouTube video of it. It's a single screen that starts out with like a field of just filled in blocks. And you have a character, a symbol that represents your character, and around it there's spaces that indicate your line of sight. And as you explore the dungeon, it fills in the map as you go, like an early roguelike. If you encounter a monster, then they'll throw you into a fight mode. But there are other types of encounters that you can find. You can find healing spots or traps. Anyway, and there's a goal item you're looking for, and the idea is to find the goal item and then get out the exit. You can find the goal item and get out the entrance, but you won't get as many experience points for doing that. Oh, yeah. Loadstar would publish several dungeon adventures, though, in its history. So, all right. So, okay, we'll just leave that. Anyone else? Yes?
Yeah, can you go back to the game list? There was
okay. This isn't all the game. I just
right, but there was one I saw. Frogs and Flies was in here.
yeah. I think wasn't there a
It is Robin Harmon's game.
oh
It's show and tell.
really?
Yes, and he did a YouTube video a year or two ago, something like that, where he talks about when he wrote that game and submitted it, and I think that was the first program he sold.
Oh.
Was Frogs and Flies.
Yeah, I haven't seen as many of Robin's videos as I probably should. I hear that he's mentioned Loadstar multiple times. Yeah, I sent him a couple of emails, but I feel like I'm annoying him if I send him too many. Yeah, I have heard from someone else that he's not here this year. What would be something fun to show off? Bounty Among Us. Oh, I wanted to show off Alfredo. Yeah, that's the 15-minute warning. Alfredo got his start on Softdisk, and most of his earlier adventures are ports from Softdisk versions, to Loadstar. They're basically the adventures of a hapless stickman explorer who's just trying to get home one day, but is set by a series of increasingly ludicrous traps. Here's the first one, Alfredo's Lost Cause. These are not interactive at all. They're little cartoons. Just to prove, Adobe Flash did not invent stickman animations. Apparently, Alfredo can't read. That thing is a lot left. Yeah. And Alfredo, was mostly a soft disk thing, but towards the end of Fender's tenure as managing editor, he published two last Alfredo adventures. Would be Return of Alfredo and Alfredo's Pitfall, which Dave Moorman would republish later. I think Ricky DeRocher, who I mentioned before, and has helped me in fixing the disks for Loadstar Compleat. He wrote those two. Yeah. All right. So, anyone else? Yes?
Where would one start with Loadstar? Is there a good entry point? Let's just pick that issue.
Yeah, that's the difficult thing because there's so much of it. Fender's first issue, I think, was 43. That might be a good place to start. But there were great things on Loadstar before then. But Fender really made the magazine his. its personality will become inseparable. So, yeah, here's some software that I particularly thought interesting. Murder in the Museum was written by Fender, and it's a text adventure game. Loadstar's got lots of text adventure games. Starring Inspector Lamort, which is probably an unfortunate name for a text adventure game protagonist. It makes it sound like he's going to die. Which will probably happen. So that how to put it? Yeah, C to C. Yeah. No. Oh. I've thought about it, but most of this presentation is actually from the text files I've already written for it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I wrote a lot for this. See, here's an interesting. Loadstar published a program called Fun Graphics Machine that was originally sold standalone, but then sold to Loadstar for them to in turn sell on their magazines, which is a fairly decent graphics editor program. Was put out by an outfit called SOGWAP, which stands for Sons of God with All Power. But it's when you start exploring Fun Graphics Machine, you realize that there is an absurd amount of power in this program. Raptor was a file compression utility that they wrote, not just to compress files so they could fit more on the disk, but Raptor can it can hold GEOS files without corrupting them. Any case, yeah. All right. Anyone else? Yes.
I was in the States a few months ago, and I found many dozen issues with Loadstar. Did you like them?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
I have like 80, 130 some, and a lot of fans.
Oh, bring it up here when you afterward. How? Okay. I mean, a lot of Loadstar's subscribers were elderly, and they didn't want to move on from the Commodore 64.
Yeah, she was a power user for sure. She had hundreds of Commodore discs.
Yeah. I wonder if it might have actually been Barbara Shulak. I don't know.
No, it wasn't.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, maybe I can figure it out. You had a question?
Yeah, so with the feedback, do you know how many people actually return the feedback, or do people still
I don't know, but they kept the feedback system going for a while. And even after they stopped giving out discs, they still kept the programs for sending in feedback. It actually took me a long time to weed those out of the program listing. Since having 60 copies of Loadstar briefs, where it's basically that text editor and color customization, I don't think that's useful in exploring them. Anyone else? Okay, where are we on time? We have about 8 minutes left. So I just want to read what I wrote here. So just thanks to all Loadstar editors, employees, contributors, subscribers, and users throughout the years. This project is my bid to help all of you be remembered as far as it's in my power to do so. May your names ring through the ages, and your words and code be inscribed as on stone. Okay, if you look through Loadstar, you'll find some of my own games there when I was a teen. Let's see. Yeah, there's some. I wrote some interesting programs on the different issues. Some interesting early programs, Softdisk ports. The Steinbeck spreadsheet, I think, is on issue 19. That's actually a Commodore 64 version of a PC program. And the version that's on Loadstar is actually not the full version. The cover calls it the abridged Steinbeck spreadsheet. Forest Fire was a Commodore magazine game. It's surprisingly fun. It's just a game where you move a cursor around and try to put out little red dots before they spread too far. But I played that for a couple of hours. It's a marvelous game. All Smiles is a sort of weird platformer where your character is a smiley face. And it's got the weirdest sound effects I think I've ever heard in a computer game. Let me just demonstrate that real quick. That's not it. Did I close it? I did. I closed it. Okay, highlights, Spotlight Games, all smiles. No. Oh, another joystick thing. I have my joystick hooked up. Well, you see what the sounds are like. Surprisingly many Loadstar programs that are written in BASIC don't have the run stop key disabled, which is mapped to escape. So if you decide to try this, be careful with the escape key. I wish I remembered about the joystick. So, okay. So, yeah, here it is. So, Disputes Gazelle. That was an April Fool's Day sort of compilation program that they made to make fun of Computes Gazette. The issue, the cover of that issue was on newsstands. They actually printed Disputes Gazelle in the Computes Gazette trade dress font. Let's see. What else? Let's see. Yeah, I think that's most of what I had. There's all the magazines that outlived. All right. So, do you want to call it there? Does anyone else have anything to say? And if anyone came in late, if you want one of these issues, just feel free to take one. Oh, we'll just end it here. Thank you.